This is echoes carved by the ancestors. The petroglyphs in this image ignite the imagination, inspiring the vibrant interpretation behind today's story.
The Circle That Gathered the Sky, Chapter Organization. Chapter 1, The Valley Beneath the Living Sun. Long before distant travelers crossed the sandstone mesas and gave unfamiliar names to the rivers that wandered to the high desert, there existed a quiet valley embraced by crimson cliffs and endless horizons. Each dawn painted the stone with gold before slowly awakening the cottonwoods beside a winding stream whose waters arrived only when winter snows surrendered themselves to the mountains far beyond sight. The people who lived there called themselves the Ashaviri, the people who walked with the seasons. They believed no creature belonged to the valley alone. The wind belonged to every canyon. The river belonged to every thirsty root. The sky belonged to every wing. And the sun belonged to all living things equally. From childhood, every boy and girl learned the oldest lesson spoken by the elders. Nothing survives by standing alone. Every hunt, every harvest, every birth, every farewell reminded them that the world breathed through countless lives moving together like one great heartbeat. Their homes rested among clusters of juniper and pinyon pine. Fields of maize stretched wherever moisture lingered longest after spring rains. Squash vines curled around smooth stones, while beans climbed woven poles fashioned from willow gathered along the creek. Children laughed while chasing lizards over warm sandstone. Women gathered yucca fibers beneath broad skies. Men repaired bows beside evening fires. Grandparents taught stories whose beginnings no one remembered because they had always existed. The valley itself was considered an elder. Its cliffs listened. Its waters remembered. Its winds carried voices farther than footsteps ever could. No one owned the land. The people believed they merely borrowed it for a single lifetime. Among the Ashaviri lived a young hunter named Taleku. Unlike many hunters, Taleku never celebrated the taking of an animal. Whenever a deer or a sheep offered its life so the village might live another season, he knelt beside it in silence. He thanked it. He laid cedar branches across its shoulder. He whispered, "May your footsteps continue where mine cannot." Some of the younger hunters teased him. "You speak to animals as though they answer." Taleku smiled. They answered differently. His grandfather, Elder Naro, often watched these moments from beneath an ancient cottonwood. "The animals remember who speaks with gratitude," the old man once said, "and the mountains remember those who do not." Taleku never forgot those words. Naro had become the oldest living storyteller of the valley. His hair flowed white against weathered shoulders. His hands trembled only when resting. When telling stories, they moved with surprising strength, shaping invisible rivers and soaring birds through the air. Children crowded around him every evening. Adults listened no less carefully. For Naro never claimed stories belonged to him. "They belong to tomorrow," he would say. "I merely carry them until someone stronger arrives." One spring morning, after many weeks without clouds, Naro climbed a low ridge overlooking the valley. He stood there for a long time. Too long. Taleku quietly approached. "What troubles you?" Naro pointed toward the eastern horizon. "Do you hear it?" Taleku listened. "Only wind. Only distant ravens. I hear nothing." "Exactly." The elder sighed. "The valley has become too quiet." For generations, the Ashaviri measured time not by moons alone, but by visitors. The first hummingbird, the first butterfly, the return of cranes, the migration of deer, the arrival of bighorn sheep descending from high cliffs. Each visitor announced another turning of the great cycle. But this year, the deer had not yet appeared. The sheep remained hidden. Even the ravens seemed restless. Something had shifted. No one understood why. That evening, the council of elders gathered beneath the largest cottonwood. 7 elders formed a circle. No one sat above another. In the center burned fragrant juniper. Naro spoke first. "The valley waits." An older woman named Sienna, keeper seeds, nodded. "The maize grows slowly." Another elder added, "The springs rise later." A hunter said, "The game follows different trails." Silence settled around the circle. Finally, Naro looked toward Taleku. You have watched the hills more carefully than anyone. Taleku hesitated. The deer looked behind themselves. Several elders exchanged glances. They moved as though following something unseen. That night the stars emerged brighter than anyone remembered. Children counted them until sleep claimed them beside the fires. Naro remained awake. His eyes searched the heavens. Near midnight, a brilliant star drifted across the northern sky, not quickly like a falling ember, but slowly, almost thoughtfully. The elder closed his eyes. It begins. Morning arrived, carrying cool winds from distant mountains. The village awoke to unfamiliar sounds. Bighorn sheep stood quietly upon nearby ridges, not fleeing, watching. Dozens of them, young rams, old rams, ewes with lambs. They had gathered unusually close to the settlement. Even stranger, none appeared frightened. Taleku slowly approached the nearest ridge. The oldest ram stepped forward. Its horns curved like twin crescents catching morning light. For several heartbeats, man and animal simply observed one another. Then the ram turned toward the western cliffs. It paused, looked back once, then continued climbing. Taleku felt something impossible to explain. Not fear, not curiosity, an invitation. That afternoon he sought Naro. The sheep wished us to follow. The elder nodded as though hearing expected news. I dreamed they would. You already knew? I hoped I was wrong. Taleku frowned. What waits beyond the western cliffs? Naro smiled gently. The question is not what waits. He looked toward the blazing sky. It is who has been waiting. Preparations began quietly. No celebration announced the journey. Instead, every household contributed something. A woven blanket, dried maize, water gourds, medicinal herbs, arrow shafts. Children gathered smooth stones for cooking fires. Women braided strong rope from yucca fibers. The village would send only a small group. Taleku, Naro, Sienna, 2 experienced hunters, 3 young apprentices, 1 gifted singer named Amina, whose voice could calm frightened children during storms. Before dawn, the entire village gathered beside the stream. No speeches were made. Instead, each person placed one hand upon the traveler's shoulders. No words, only shared strength. The oldest blessing required no language. The journey west began beneath the sky, so clear it seemed endless. They crossed fields where rabbits vanished among sagebrush. They climbed sandstone ledges glowing orange beneath the morning sun. Golden eagles circled high above invisible currents. Every evening, Naro instructed the younger travelers to sit quietly before eating. Listen. At first they heard little. Wind, crickets, owls. Gradually they noticed more. The scratching of beetles beneath bark, seeds tumbling across stone. Far away, streams hidden inside narrow canyons. The world speaks constantly, Naro said. We simply spend too much time answering ourselves. On the 5th day, they encountered deer. Not one, hundreds. Entire herds moved silently through a broad valley. Yet something felt unusual. Rather than scattering at the sight of humans, the animals divided naturally, leaving an open path directly through their migration. Taleku lowered his bow. No arrows. The hunters nodded. Even hunger could not justify disturbing such a moment. The people walked slowly between living rivers of deer. Fawns stared curiously. Old ducks continued grazing. Great antlered bucks lifted their heads, as though offering silent recognition. Amina whispered, "It feels like walking through a blessing." Naro answered, "Remember this day." Beyond the valley rose towering cliffs streaked with red, gold, and white. Cloud shadows drifted across them like enormous spirits. Near sunset, the travelers discovered a hidden spring flowing from solid stone. Around it grew lush grasses, unlike anything they had seen for many days. Bird song filled the air. The place felt untouched. Sacred. No footprints. No camps. Only life. Sienna knelt beside the water. The earth has hidden this place. Naro touched the spring. No. He smiled softly. It has protected it. That night, Taleku dreamed. He stood alone beneath a sky filled with countless stars. One by one they began descending, not falling, walking. Each became a tiny point of light upon the earth. Soon the desert shimmered with thousands of glowing footsteps. Then all those lights slowly gathered into one enormous circle. The circle began turning. Its edges stretched outward into countless rays. Brilliant, warm, alive. At its center stood a single figure whose arms reached toward every direction at once. The figure spoke without moving. Life survives only when every path meets. Taleku awoke before dawn. His heartbeat echoed, louder than the wind. He stepped outside the shelter of woven blankets. Above him the final stars faded. The first light of morning spread across the eastern horizon. As the sun rose, its rays burst over the sandstone cliffs exactly as they had appeared in his dream. Behind him, Naro quietly emerged. You saw it. Taleku turned. How did you know? The elder looked toward the rising light. Because I dreamed the same circle many years ago. He smiled gently, but mine was incomplete. Taleku stared. What completed it? Naro rested one weathered hand upon the young hunter's shoulder. You. The old storyteller gazed toward the west, where distant cliffs glowed like embers waiting to awaken. Our true journey begins today. Chapter 2: The Journey of the Four Directions. Morning spread slowly across the sandstone country, filling every canyon with rivers of golden light. The chill of night withdrew into the shadows while ravens glided silently between towering cliffs, their wings catching the first warmth of the sun. Taleku stood alone upon a high ledge where he had dreamed of the radiant circle. The vision lingered within him more vividly than memory itself. It had not felt like sleep. It had felt like stepping into another world that existed alongside his own. Naro joined him without a word. Together they watched the valley awaken. Far below, the hidden springs shimmered beneath cottonwoods, whose leaves danced with the morning breeze. Deer emerged cautiously from the trees, while several bighorn sheep climbed effortlessly along impossible cliffs. None of the animals seemed surprised by one another's presence. Predators had not appeared. Fear itself seemed absent. Naro finally spoke. Have you noticed something? Taleku nodded. They are sharing the valley. Exactly. The elder smiled. When balance is healthy, even enemies understand limits. Taleku watched the doe drink only a short distance from several sheep. Perhaps they know something we have forgotten. Naro looked toward the endless western horizon. That is why we have come. After breakfast, the travelers continued beyond the hidden spring. The land gradually changed. The narrow canyons widened into broad valleys lined with weathered sandstone domes. Juniper forests gave way to open grasslands where wildflowers colored the earth with yellow, purple, and white. Everywhere life flourished. Bees moved from blossom to blossom. Lizards basked upon warm stone. Hawks circled high overhead. Cyanna paused often to study unfamiliar plants. She carried a woven pouch filled with seeds gathered from their homeland. Whenever she found healthy soil beside streams, she carefully planted a handful before continuing. One apprentice finally asked, "Why do you leave our seeds behind?" Cyanna smiled. Because kindness should travel farther than footsteps. The young people considered her answer for the rest of the day. Near midday, they encountered an elderly woman sitting alone beneath a solitary juniper tree. No camp surrounded her. No baskets. No water jars. Only a polished walking staff rested beside her. Her gray hair moved gently in the breeze. She looked neither surprised nor frightened by their arrival. Instead, she smiled as though greeting family returning from a long journey. Taleku quietly approached. "Grandmother, are you alone?" "I have never been alone." She looked upward. The wind stirred the branches. Birdsong answered from somewhere unseen. The old woman chuckled softly. "You asked the wrong question." Naro stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "What should we ask?" She pointed toward the eastern sky. "Ask whether you have been listening." No one spoke. After several moments, she rose with surprising ease despite her age. "You seek the circle that gathers the sky." The travelers stared in astonishment. Taleku exchanged a glance with Naro. Neither had spoken of his dream. The woman continued. "Many generations have searched for it. Have you seen it?" Taleku asked. "I have walked beneath its light." "Where?" She pointed not west, not east, but toward the open desert surrounding them. It is never in one place. The apprentices looked confused. The woman smiled warmly. That is the first lesson. Before leaving, she placed 4 smooth stones into Taleku's hands. Each differed slightly. One was black, one white, one red, one golden. The 4 directions are not merely places. She gently closed his fingers around them. They are ways of becoming. What do they mean? She answered carefully. The east teaches beginnings. The south teaches growth. The west teaches surrender. The north teaches wisdom. She paused. When a person walks all 4, they become whole. Then, as quietly as she had appeared, she continued along her own path until the shimmering desert swallowed her from sight. None of the travelers spoke for a long time. Finally, one apprentice whispered. Who was she? Naoro smiled. Sometimes the world sends teachers. That evening they camped atop a broad mesa overlooking valleys stretching beyond imagination. Amina sang while the fire crackled softly. Her songs never named people directly. Instead, they praised rivers, clouds, birds, mountains. Children often asked why. She always answered, when we praise creation, everyone hears their own name. As darkness deepened, the stars emerged one by one until the heavens overflowed with light. Taleku again noticed something unusual. Several constellations seemed connected by faint streams of stars he had never before recognized. Naro noticed his gaze. What do you see? A path. The elder smiled. The ancestors called it the river above. The stars are connected? They always have been. We simply see only the brightest ones. The next morning, heavy clouds gathered unexpectedly. For weeks the travelers had crossed clear skies. Now thunder echoed across distant mesas. Children back home loved storms. Hunters respected them. Elders welcomed them. Rain meant life. The first drops fell before noon. No one sought shelter. Instead, the entire company stood quietly beneath the open sky. Cool rain washed dust from their faces. It soaked clothing. It filled empty washes. It awakened the fragrance of sagebrush until the entire desert seemed to breathe. Sienna lifted both hands. Listen. The apprentices closed their eyes. Rain sounded different upon every surface. Stone, leaves, water, sand. Each created its own music. Taleku watched thousands of tiny drops strike the earth. They disappeared instantly into thirsty soil. Every drop chooses a different place. Naro answered, and together they awakened the valley. By afternoon, the storm had passed. Sunlight returned. Across the eastern sky stretched a magnificent rainbow, unlike anything the travelers had ever seen. Its colors reached from one sandstone cliff to another, forming a vast bridge over the valley. The youngest apprentice gasped. It touches the earth. Naro shook his head gently. No, it reminds us that sky and earth have always touched. The rainbow lingered long after the rain ended. Taleku remembered the curved shape from his dream. A bridge, a doorway, a promise. Days later, the travelers entered a basin surrounded by gently curving hills. The place felt strangely peaceful. Grass grew unusually green. Wildflowers covered the slopes. A clear spring emerged from beneath a cluster of ancient cottonwoods. Hundreds of birds filled the branches. No hunting occurred there. No traps. No footprints except those of animals. Naro knelt. This place has been protected. Sienna nodded, not because someone guarded it, but because everyone respected it. The travelers understood. Some places nourished more than hunger. They nourished memory. That evening, dozens of deer entered the basin. Instead of scattering at the sight of humans, they grazed calmly nearby. Soon afterward, bighorn sheep descended from surrounding cliffs. Even rabbits emerged. Foxes watched from a respectful distance. No animal showed fear. Amina quietly began singing. The melody rose into the cooling air. One by one, the travelers joined. No words, only voices. The animals lifted their heads. Some stepped closer. The song became part of the valley itself. Taleku suddenly realized something remarkable. The music did not belong to the people alone. Wind carried it. Water echoed it. Birds answered it. Even the rustling grasses seemed to move with its rhythm. For one brief evening, everything belonged to one ceremony. That night, Taleku dreamed again. He stood inside a vast circle of light. Around him appeared countless people. Some wore clothing unlike anyone in his village. Some carried staffs. Others held woven baskets. Children laughed. Elders smiled. Hunters stood beside healers. No one spoke, yet everyone understood one another. Then animals entered the circle. Deer, bighorn sheep, mountain sheep, eagles, ravens, coyotes. Each took a place beside the people rather than apart from them. Above the gathering floated thousands of tiny lights like stars descending from heaven. The lights slowly arranged themselves into flowing patterns. Some became rain. Some became seeds. Some formed great rivers. Others drifted upward once more into the night sky. Then the radiant circle appeared again, brighter than before. Its rays reached outward until they touched every person, every animal, every hill, every cloud. A voice unlike any human voice filled the dream. Nothing lives alone. The sun gives without choosing. The rain falls without judging. The earth receives without asking. Become as they are. Taleku reached toward the light and awakened. His hands were warm. Though dawn had not yet come, the eastern horizon already glowed with pale gold. Naro sat beside the dying fire. He looked at Taleku with calm understanding. You heard the second teaching. Taleku nodded slowly. What is the third? The elder smiled. The third cannot be spoken. It must be lived. As the first rays of morning spread across the sacred basin, a lone golden eagle rose from the highest cliff. It circled once above the gathered people and animals before soaring toward the far western horizon. Without hesitation, Taleku stood. The eagle had revealed the path. Their journey was not yet complete. Far beyond the hills, beyond the rainbow valleys and hidden springs, something ancient was waiting, not to be discovered, but to be remembered. Chapter 3: The Ceremony of Rain and Stars. The golden eagle remained visible long after it should have disappeared. It glided above the western horizon without once beating its wings, allowing invisible currents to carry it toward distant mesas whose peaks shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. Taleku watched until it became only a dark speck against the endless sky. Only then did he begin walking. The others followed without question. No one believed they were chasing a bird. They were following a direction. The eagle had become a messenger. Its flight pointed not merely toward another place, but toward another understanding. Naro smiled quietly as he watched the younger members of the journey. They no longer asked where we were going. Sayana nodded. They had begun asking who they must become. The country ahead grew wilder. Towering sandstone walls rose like sleeping giants, their faces carved by countless seasons of wind and rain. Narrow canyons opened unexpectedly into hidden meadows where springs bubbled from the earth, feeding groves of cottonwoods whose leaves shimmered like thousands of tiny mirrors. Some valleys echoed with birdsong. Others rested in perfect silence. Each possessed its own spirit. Each seemed to invite the travelers to slow their footsteps. Naro often reminded them, a hurried traveler learns the shape of the land. A patient traveler learns its heart. The apprentices repeated those words often. One afternoon they reached a place unlike any they had seen before. For narrow valleys met at a single broad basin. One opened toward the rising sun. Another toward the warmth of the southern mesas. A third disappeared into shadowed western cliffs. The last climbed steadily toward northern highlands where distant mountains touched the clouds. Taleku immediately remembered the 4 stones given by the mysterious elder woman. He removed them from his pouch. Black, white, red, golden. He placed them gently upon the ground. Naro looked at the meeting of the valleys, the 4 directions. Sayana knelt beside the stones. No direction stands above another. One apprentice frowned. Which path do we take? Naro answered, all of them. The young people looked confused. The elder smiled. Not with our feet, with our lives. They remained in the basin for 4 days. Each day honored one direction. Each direction offered its own lesson. The first day, east. They rose before dawn. No fires burned. No one spoke. Together they climbed a ridge overlooking the eastern horizon. As darkness slowly surrendered, the first ray of sunlight appeared. It touched the highest peak. Then another. Then another. Soon the entire valley awakened beneath rivers of gold. Naoro spoke softly. Every morning the sun begins again. It never complains about yesterday. Taleku watched the light spread over the earth. Even stones seemed to glow with new life. The elder continued. If the sun could begin each day without carrying yesterday's anger. He smiled. So can we. The second day, south. Warm winds drifted across flowering grasslands. Children from the village would have laughed with delight at the butterflies filling the air. Bees hummed endlessly among blossoms. Seeds floated gently upon the breeze. Sayana led the day's teaching. She carried the pouch of seeds she had protected since leaving home. Instead of planting them herself, she handed them to the apprentices. Today, you become the gardeners. The youngest hesitated. What if I choose the wrong place? There are no perfect places. There are only places waiting for hope. The young travelers scattered across the meadow. Each planted seeds wherever they felt the earth welcomed them. Taleku watched quietly. Life always began with trust. The third day, west. Clouds gathered during the afternoon. Heavy gray skies covered the sun. A cool wind swept through the basin. The traveler prepared for another storm. Instead, nothing happened. No rain. Only waiting. Hours passed. One apprentice grew impatient. When will it rain? Naoro answered. It may not, but the clouds promised. The elder smiled. No, you hoped. As evening approached, the clouds slowly drifted away. The sky cleared. Not one drop had fallen. Taleku understood. The west was teaching surrender. Not every prayer received the answer expected. Yet every prayer still changed the heart that offered it. The fourth day, north. The morning air carried unusual coolness. Even the birds sang more softly. Naoro gathered everyone beneath a sprawling juniper older than anyone could imagine. He placed no objects before them. He told no stories. Instead, he asked a single question. What wisdom have you received? One apprentice answered, The sun teaches new beginnings. Another said, Seeds teach faith. A third replied, Clouds teach patience. Naoro smiled. Good. Then he asked, What have you given? Silence settled. The young people had never considered the question. Taleku finally spoke. I gave attention. Sayana nodded approvingly. The earth rewards those who notice. That evening they prepared a simple ceremony. No elaborate clothing. No ornaments. No offerings beyond gratitude itself. Amina stood beside the spring. She closed her eyes and began singing. Her voice floated through the basin, like water moving over polished stone. One by one the others joined, not to perform, not to impress, only to belong. The melody wandered through the four valleys. Echoes returned gently from every direction. It seemed as though unseen voices answered from beyond the hills. One apprentice whispered, The ancestors are singing. Naoro smiled. Perhaps. Or perhaps the valleys have always remembered the song. As darkness deepened, the heavens filled with stars. Never had Taleku seen so many. The Milky Way stretched from horizon to horizon, like a river of light flowing across the night. The apprentices lay upon warm sandstone counting stars. Soon they gave up. There were too many. Naoro pointed upward. Our ancestors said every star is a promise. What promise? One asked. That no darkness lasts forever. Suddenly a brilliant streak crossed the sky. Then another. Soon dozens of meteors blazed overhead. The entire company watched in silence. Amina laughed with childlike wonder. It is raining stars. Taleku remembered the dream. Lights descending from heaven, each carrying purpose, each becoming part of the earth. Sayana quietly opened her seed pouch. Without explanation, she scattered a handful into the night breeze. The tiny seeds drifted across the basin. One apprentice asked, Why give away our food? She smiled. Because abundance grows only when shared. Before dawn, Taleku awoke once again. The air felt strangely alive. The stars had not yet faded. Instead, they seemed brighter. Closer, he walked alone beyond the camp. There, standing beside the spring, waited the great ram he had first seen near his home. Its magnificent horns curved like crescents beneath starlight. It neither fled nor approached. It simply watched. Taleku slowly knelt. The ram lowered its head. For several heartbeats, neither moved. Then the animal turned toward the northern ridge. Taleku followed. They climbed together without sound. At the summit, the ram stopped. Far below stretched every valley they had crossed. The hidden spring, the flowering meadow, the meeting of the four directions. Beyond them lay countless mesas fading into dawn. The ram looked toward the eastern horizon just as the first sunlight appeared. Golden rays spread across the world. Every hill glowed. Every canyon awakened. The ram stamped one hoof gently upon the stone. Taleku looked down. Tiny drops of dew covered the ground. Each reflected the sunrise. Thousands, no, millions. Every droplet contained a perfect image of the rising sun. Taleku's breath caught. The sun did not shine upon the world. It lived within it, within every drop, every leaf, every eye, every living heart. When he looked up again, the ram had vanished. Only hoofprints remained. Taleku returned to the camp transformed. Naro needed only one glance. You have received another teaching. Taleku nodded. The greatest light is never far away. The elder smiled. It has always been so. That afternoon the travelers continued westward. The landscape gradually became more rugged. Towering cliffs rose hundreds of feet into the brilliant sky. Ancient arches bridged deep canyons. Hidden springs nourished hanging gardens clinging to impossible walls. The silence here felt older, not empty, patient. As evening approached, they reached the entrance to an immense natural amphitheater formed by towering sandstone cliffs that curved around a broad, open valley. The place seemed untouched. Wind moved gently through the grasses. Golden eagles circled overhead. Bighorn sheep watched from the highest ledges. Deer emerged cautiously from the junipers below. Even ravens settled quietly upon nearby stones. No creature fled. It was as though every living being had gathered for a meeting older than memory. Taleku felt the warmth of the four stones inside his pouch. The eagle had led them here. The ram had prepared him. The stars had spoken. And somewhere within the vast silence of the valley, another lesson was waiting. One that would unite the people, the animals, the sky, and the turning seasons into a single story. A story destined to be remembered long after every voice present had become part of the wind. And a part 3. Chapter for the gathering beneath the living horizon. The great valley welcomed them without a sound. Its towering sandstone walls curved around the basin like gentle arms protecting something precious. Morning light drifted slowly down the cliffs, touching their highest ledges first before flowing toward the grasses below. Nothing seemed hurried. Even the wind moved softly, as though honoring an ancient promise. Taleku stood motionless near the valley's entrance. For the first time since leaving his home, he felt no urge to ask where they should travel next. The journey itself had become the destination. Naro noticed a change. You have stopped searching. Taleku smiled. I think I have begun seeing. The elder nodded. Then the valley has accepted you. The travelers made no permanent camp. Instead, each family group chose a different place beneath the cottonwoods, surrounding a broad spring that emerged from the base of cliffs. No one claimed the finest shade. No one measured whose place was larger. Children naturally settled beside the water. The elders rested beneath the oldest trees. Hunters sat where they could watch the surrounding hills. Everything happened without instruction, like birds choosing branches, like deer finding quiet meadows. Balance required little discussion. As the days passed, the people discovered they were not alone. Small groups began arriving from distant valleys. They came quietly. A family from the northern highlands carrying woven blankets made from mountain sheep wool. Hunters from eastern mesas bringing dried berries and medicinal herbs. Women from southern grasslands carrying baskets filled with unusual seeds. An elderly couple arrived from the western desert with polished shells gathered from a distant inland, Sia remembered only in stories. No one asked permission to enter. No one challenged strangers. Every newcomer was greeted with water before questions. Hospitality came before curiosity. Taleku watched the arrivals with growing wonder. They all came without being invited. Naro smiled. Perhaps they were. By whom? The elder looked toward the sunrise. Not every invitation is spoken. Soon dozens of cooking fires glowed beneath the cottonwoods each evening. Although every family prepared its own meal, no one ate alone. Food traveled constantly between the circles. Maize passed from one basket to another. Roasted squash changed hands. Fresh fish from distant streams appeared beside dried venison. Seeds, fruits, herbs, and nuts moved the gathering until no one remembered which family had first carried them. One evening, Taleku noticed an old woman quietly placing food beside a young child whose mother had become ill. She disappeared before anyone thanked her. He mentioned it to Sayana. She smiled. When generosity expects recognition, it becomes a trade. Several days later, the children invented a game. They gathered smooth stones from the stream. Each child placed one stone into a growing circle upon the ground. No one competed. Each simply added another stone until a great ring surrounded them. When they finished, the smallest child asked, "What does it mean?" The oldest girl answered, "It means everyone helped." Naro, watching nearby, laughed softly. The wisest teachers have the shortest legs. As the gathering continued, hunters from many valleys began sharing stories. One spoke of following deer across snowy mountains. Another described watching mountain sheep climb cliffs where no human foot could follow. A woman hunter from the southern country spoke quietly. "The animals have changed." Every conversation stopped. "What do you mean?" "They traveled differently." Several others nodded. "The deer stop more often. The sheep gather in unusual places. The birds circle valleys before continuing." Taleku felt his heartbeat quicken. The same changes had begun near his own home. Naro looked around the gathering. "Perhaps they are teaching us." No one laughed. The next morning, dozens of hunters climbed surrounding ridges together. Not to hunt, only to observe. They sat silently from sunrise until midday. What they witnessed astonished them. A herd of deer entered the valley from the east. Hours later, a band of bighorn sheep descended from western cliffs. Neither fled, neither challenged the other. Instead, they drank from the same spring before continuing their separate journeys. Golden eagles circled above. Ravens landed among them. Even coyotes passed quietly without disturbing the peace. Taleku whispered, "They trust this place." Naro answered, "They trust what this place remembers." That evening, the elders from every visiting people gathered beneath the largest cottonwood. No one claimed leadership. Instead, they formed a great circle. Young people sat behind them, children behind the young. The circle widened until nearly everyone present became part of it. In the center burned a small juniper fire whose fragrant smoke rose toward the stars. Naro spoke first. "We have all seen the same changes." An elder from the northern mountains nodded. "The snows melt differently." A woman from southern grasslands added, "The flowers bloom earlier." Another elder said, "The rivers choose new paths." Silence settled gently. Finally, an elderly hunter, whose face carried countless years of desert sunlight, spoke. "The world is speaking. We have forgotten how to listen." No one argued. The following day, no work was done. No hunting, no gathering, no repairing. Instead, the entire gathering walked together through the valley. Children first, then elders, then everyone else. They stopped often to admire wildflowers, to watch insects carrying food many times their size, to observe tiny birds building nests, to notice ants following invisible trails. Taleku realized something profound. Every living thing possessed purpose. Nothing existed merely to fill empty space. Near midday, they reached a broad meadow where thousands of tiny blossoms covered the earth. Bees moved endlessly among them. One apprentice asked Sayana, "How can so many flowers grow together without fighting?" She knelt beside a blossom. "They are not trying to become the same flower." Late that afternoon, dark clouds gathered above the western cliffs. Unlike earlier storms, these clouds grew quickly. Thunder echoed across the valley. Lightning flashed beyond distant mesas. Children instinctively moved closer to their families. Hunters quietly secured supplies. The elders simply watched. Then the rain came, not as scattered drops, not as a passing shower. The heavens opened. Water poured across the valley in shimmering curtains. Dry washes awakened. The spring overflowed. Tiny streams raced through grasses that moments earlier had been dusty and still. Instead of running for shelter, the people remained where they stood. Children laughed. Adults lifted their faces toward the sky. The elders spread their arms wide. Taleku remembered his dream, the great figure standing with open arms beneath the radiant light. Protection, welcome, gratitude. He slowly lifted his own arms. Soon others did the same. Hundreds of people stood beneath the falling rain with open hands, receiving rather than hiding. The valley became silent except for water. As suddenly as it had begun, the rain ended. Mist drifted upward from the warmed earth. Then something extraordinary happened. One rainbow appeared above the eastern cliffs. Then another. Soon several brilliant arcs stretched across different parts of the valley until it seemed the sky itself had become woven with color. Children pointed excitedly. Elders simply smiled. Naro whispered, "The earth is answering." That evening, every stream reflected the brilliant colors fading into twilight. Tiny pools left behind by the rain became mirrors holding fragments of the sky. Taleku knelt beside one. He looked into the water. Instead of seeing only his own reflection, he saw clouds drifting overhead, stars beginning to appear. The first evening bird crossing the valley. The world existed together. Nothing stood apart. Night settled peacefully. Thousands of stars emerged. Without planning, the people gathered once more into a great circle. No fire stood at the center this time. Instead, the open sky became their roof, the stars their lanterns. Amina rose quietly. She began singing. No one had heard this melody before. Perhaps she had never sung it before. Perhaps it had arrived with the rain. One by one other voices joined, not in perfect harmony, not in practiced performance, but in honest belonging. The song rose into the night. Golden eagles settled upon nearby cliffs. Owls remained silent. Even the coyotes listening from distant ridges did not howl. For one timeless moment, the valley itself seemed to breathe with the people. Then Taleku noticed something. The stars above appeared brighter directly over the center of the gathering. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, several brilliant stars seemed to align. Then more, until a great radiant circle formed across the heavens. Its countless points of light spread outward like rays reaching toward every horizon. No one spoke. Children stopped moving. Even the wind grew still. The immense circle hovered above the gathering, not frightening, not overwhelming, simply present. Taleku felt warmth spread through his heart, not from the earth, not from the sky, from both. Naro quietly whispered beside him, "The sun teaches us by day. The stars continue the lesson by night." As the radiant circle slowly dissolved back into the countless stars from which it had formed, every person present understood the same truth without speaking it aloud. The heavens were not separate from the earth. The people were not separate from the animals. The changing seasons were not separate from life. Everything belonged to one great circle that neither began nor ended. And before dawn arrived, Taleku would receive one final vision. One that would reveal how this gathering, these teachings, and the sacred valley itself should be remembered for generations yet unborn. End of Part 4. Chapter 5, When the Sky Was Remembered. Before the first hint of dawn touched the eastern horizon, Taleku awoke. No sound had disturbed his sleep. No dream had startled him. Instead, a gentle certainty settled within him, as though the earth itself had whispered his name. The great gathering still rested beneath the stars. Small fires had faded into glowing embers. Families slept wrapped in woven blankets, while only a few elders remained awake, quietly watching the heavens as they had throughout countless nights before. Taleku rose without waking anyone. He carried no bow, no spear, only the 4 smooth stones given to him many days before. Black, white, red, golden. They felt warmer than they ever had before. Without thinking, he began walking toward the highest sandstone overlook that watched over the great valley. The climb was steep. Juniper roots gripped narrow ledges. Desert grasses brushed softly against his legs. Owls silently returned to hidden nests as the eastern sky slowly changed from black to deep blue. Halfway up the cliff, he noticed something remarkable. Animals were climbing as well. Not together, yet together. A young doe stepped quietly through the brush. A family of bighorn sheep climbed impossible slopes nearby. A raven landed upon a weathered cedar. Far above, the golden eagle circled once before settling upon a rocky pinnacle overlooking the valley. None appeared frightened. None hurried. Each seemed drawn by the same invisible invitation. When Taleku reached the summit, he discovered Naro already waiting. The elder smiled without surprise. I wondered how long it would take. You knew I would come? Naro looked toward the eastern horizon. No, I trusted the valley. The old storyteller motioned toward the stone beside him. Sit. Together they waited in silence. Below them, mist drifted gently above the springs. The gathering remained asleep. Only the animals and the 2 men witnessed the first light. As the sun broke above the distant mesas, its rays spread across the valley exactly as Taleku had seen in every vision. The light touched the highest cliffs first, then the eagle, then the bighorn sheep, then the deer grazing near the spring. Finally, the sleeping people. No one received the light before another. The sun offered itself equally. Taleku suddenly understood. The sun never chooses. Naro nodded. It cannot. It gives itself completely. The elder smiled. So should we. The first people below slowly awakened. Children emerged from blankets. Women rekindled cooking fires. Hunters stretched tired muscles. Yet something unusual happened. Instead of beginning the day's work immediately, everyone looked upward toward the cliff where Taleku and Naro sat. No signal had been given. No messenger had called them. Still, one by one, families quietly climbed toward the overlook. Soon hundreds of people stood together beneath the morning sky. No one knew exactly why they had come. They simply felt they belonged there. Naro slowly stepped forward. For many seasons he had been the keeper of stories. Today his voice carried farther than ever before. We have walked many valleys. We have crossed rivers. We have followed animals. We have welcomed strangers. We have learned from rain. We have learned from stars. We have learned from silence. He looked across the gathering. But none of these belong only to us. The people listen without movement. The deer feed the wolf. The flowers feed the bees. The river feeds the roots. The sun feeds everyone. He opened his weathered hands. Why then should people believe they live apart from the world that gives them life? No one answered. No answer was needed. An elder woman from the northern mountains stepped forward. Our children must remember. Another elder added, and their children. A hunter from the southern grasslands nodded. Memory is as important as food. Sienna smiled. Without memory, the seeds of wisdom cannot grow. Taleku reached into his pouch. He removed the 4 stones. Without speaking, he placed them gently upon the ground. One toward the east, one toward the south, one toward the west, one toward the north. Children immediately understood. They gathered more stones. Soon adults joined them. No one instructed anyone. A great circle slowly formed upon the summit. Each person contributed a single stone. Large, small, smooth, rough. Every stone became necessary. No one asked whose stone was most important. The circle existed because every hand had taken part. Naro whispered, "This is how nations should be built." When the circle was complete, Taleku stood within it. He slowly lifted his arms toward the morning sun, not to command, not to perform, only to give thanks. Without planning, others followed. Hundreds of people opened their arms toward the light. Children copied their parents. Elders smiled through quiet tears. The gesture spread naturally through the gathering. Protection, gratitude, belonging. communication with something greater than themselves. Taleku remembered the great figure from his dreams. He finally understood. The figure had never represented one person. It represented anyone who chose to stand between heaven and earth with an open heart. The golden eagle left its perch. It circled once above the people. Then another eagle joined it. Soon ravens filled the air. Small songbirds emerged from the cottonwoods below. Deer stepped into the open meadow. The great ram descended from the cliffs. Even distant coyotes appeared upon surrounding ridges. No creature entered the human circle. No human entered theirs. Yet together they formed one greater circle surrounding the valley itself. The children noticed first. They came. Naoro smiled. No, they were always here. Clouds gathered lightly during the afternoon, not storm clouds. Gentle clouds that softened the sunlight. A cool breeze drifted through the grasses. Seeds lifted into the air and floated across the valley. Thousands, perhaps millions, each carried the possibility of tomorrow. Sayana watched them dance upon the wind. Every seed is a promise. A small girl asked, "A promise of what?" The elder answered, "That life wishes to continue." That evening, after the shared meal, the oldest storytellers from all the visiting people gathered together. For the first time, they spoke not of their own valleys. Instead, they shared one story. The story they had all lived together. The eagle, the deer, the sheep, the stars, the four directions, the rainbow, the gathering, the songs, the circle. As each elder spoke, the others gently added details. No single voice owned the story. Like the river, it became stronger as more streams joined it. Taleku realized something beautiful. Truth often belonged to many witnesses. Several days later, the visiting families prepared to return to their own homes. There were no farewells filled with sorrow, only gratitude. Seeds were exchanged. Songs were shared. Children promised to remember new friends. Hunters exchanged carved arrow points. Healers traded knowledge of herbs. The gathering slowly dissolved like morning mist. Yet no one believed it had ended. Its spirit would travel with every traveler. Before Naoro left the valley, he called Taleku aside. "My footsteps grow shorter." Taleku looked down. The elder's smile remained peaceful. "I will not lead many more journeys." Taleku's eyes filled with tears. "You still have many stories." Naoro laughed softly. "Exactly. And now..." He gently placed a weathered hand upon Taleku's shoulder. "So do you..." The journey home felt different. The same rivers flowed. The same mesas rose against the sky. The same winds crossed the desert. Yet Taleku no longer saw separate places. He saw one living world connected by invisible threads. When deer crossed a valley, they carried stories. When birds migrated, they carried memory. When rain fell, it united distant mountains with thirsty roots far below. Everything belonged. The Ashaviri welcomed the travelers with joyful celebration. Children ran to greet them. Families embraced. Questions filled the evening. What did you see? What did you learn? Were there many people? Taleku answered gently. We found ourselves. That winter the elders gathered often, not to preserve possessions, not to count harvests, but to consider how future generations might remember what had happened. Naoro listened quietly while others spoke. Finally he rose. Our voices will one day become silent. The gathering grew still. Our children deserve something that will outlive every storyteller. An elder asked, what can survive longer than memory? Naoro looked toward the towering sandstone cliff that overlooked the valley. The stone. Throughout the following seasons, the people carefully planned how to preserve the teachings. Not as written words, for they had none, and not as a literal record of every event, but as a sacred remembrance woven from symbols that every generation could contemplate anew. The elders chose protected sandstone wall overlooking the valley. The first image they envisioned was a great radiant circle, representing the life-giving sun, the sacred circle of existence, the changing seasons, and the light that belonged equally to all. Near it they placed a great human figure with arms spread wide, not as a portrait of Taleku or Naoro, but as a symbol of every person who stands between earth and sky with gratitude, invoking harmony, offering protection and listening to the spirit carried by the wind. Above and around that figure appeared smaller human forms, honoring the community, the ancestors, future generations, and the unseen presence that had accompanied the gathering. They added deer and mighty bighorn sheep, remembering that animals were never merely food but teachers, companions in the great cycle, guides during migrations, and living reminders that humanity walked beside, not above, the natural world. Around the figures they placed clusters of small dots, each carrying many meanings at once. Stars shining to the longest nights, seeds scattered with hope, rain that awakened thirsty valleys, blessings of fertility, offerings of gratitude, and the countless moments that together formed a lifetime. They traced gentle curved lines, recalling the embracing hills, the rainbows after life-giving storms, sacred gathering places, distant horizons, and every journey that had led people back to one another. A descending line of dots remembered the rain that united heaven and earth, the invisible pathway between the spirit world and the living, the ceremonial staff of wisdom, and the blessings that flowed downward to nourish all life. Finally, they placed a 4-part symbol, honoring the 4 directions, balance, the seasons, and the truth that no single path was complete without the others. When the work was finished, the people stood in silence before the completed images. No elder declared, "This is their only meaning." No storyteller claimed to possess the final interpretation. Instead, Naro smiled and said, "Each generation will see something new. They should. For wisdom, like the sun, rises differently every morning." Many generations later, strangers would discover the enduring symbols upon the sandstone and wonder what story they told. Only the wind, the valley, and the descendants of those who had gathered beneath the living horizon would remember that the images were never meant to capture a single moment. They were created to remind every future traveler of an eternal truth. That ritual is gratitude made visible. That spirituality begins with listening. That the landscape is not merely where life happens, but a living relative. That people, animals, rivers, rain, stars, and the turning seasons all belong to one sacred circle. And that whenever human hands are opened in humility beneath the rising sun, the sky is gathered once more. The end.
No echoes of their footsteps faded into the desert wind. The teachings of the Ashaviri lived on, not only in the hearts of their descendants, but in the enduring symbols left upon the sandstone. Though the true meaning of those ancient images may never be fully known, they continue to invite each generation to pause, reflect, and remember that the greatest wisdom is found in living in harmony with one another, the land, the animals, and the ever-turning sky. Some stories are never truly finished. They simply wait in stone for the next traveler willing to listen. To hear more stories from the ancestors, choose another story, explore one of our playlists, or subscribe to our channel using the links on your screen.